While the world watches the mud in Ukraine, a different war just exploded. This one's silent, deadly, and it's happening in the freezing waters of the north. Russian submarines are lurking beneath the waves, mapping the cables that keep the global internet alive. But this time, they've walked into a trap. NATO has pulled the trigger. Hunter teams are deploying in the Atlantic. Balloon killers are patrolling the Baltic skies. And on the ground, the era of peace is over. The era of landmines has returned. Ursula von der Leyen just gave the order. The Northern Front is no longer cold. It's burning hot. For years, the West was accused of being slow, bureaucratic, afraid of escalation. But this week, something snapped in Brussels and Washington. Just hours ago, von der Leyen announced a crushing new sanctions package against Belarus. Why? Because the trucking hostage crisis pushed Europe over the edge. But this isn't just about trucks anymore. This is a coordinated, multi-domain counterattack. From the ocean depths to the edge of space, the Western alliance is locking down the Russian border. We're witnessing the construction of a new iron curtain. But this one isn't made of concrete. It's made of smart mines, hunter-killer drones, and billion-dollar sensors. Today, we break down the four fronts of this new war: the economic siege, the balloon threat, the submarine hunt, and the minefields. Sources: European Commission, Reuters, Associated Press. Let's start with the strangest battlefield of all, the sky over Lithuania. Imagine you're a NATO general. You've spent billions on Patriot missiles and F-35 jets, and then your enemy defeats you with a $10 balloon. Lithuania has been forced to close its airports repeatedly. Why? Because Belarus is launching waves of weather balloons across the border. Some carry smuggled cigarettes. Some carry GPS trackers. But on a radar screen, they look like drones. They look like missiles. They force civilian planes to divert, military jets to scramble. This is hybrid warfare at its most cynical. Lukashenko is testing NATO's reflexes, mapping the blind spots in air defense without firing a shot. It's a psychological game. We can touch you anytime, and you can't stop us with your expensive missiles. But Lithuania is changing the rules. The government is rewriting the law to allow border guards to shoot these balloons down on sight, with machine guns. The message is clear. If it flies from Belarus, it dies. Sources: Associated Press, LRT, Lithuanian National Radio and Television. But while the balloons distract us in the air, the existential threat is deep underwater. And here, the West just made a massive move. The United Kingdom, Norway, and other Northern Group nations have signed a strategic partnership to hunt Russian submarines. Why now? Because the threat has changed. Russian ghost submarines and spy ships aren't just looking for aircraft carriers anymore. They're mapping the undersea cables and gas pipelines that keep Europe alive. 97% of the world's internet traffic passes through these cables, trillions of dollars in financial transactions. Cut them, and the global economy seizes. This new hunter team works like a high-tech dragnet. The UK is deploying P-8 Poseidon maritime patrol aircraft. Norway is using its ultra-quiet frigates. They're dropping sonar buoys across the GI-UK gap, Greenland, Iceland, UK, the strategic choke point that Russian subs must pass to enter the Atlantic. This is a direct message to the Russian Northern Fleet. You cannot hide. If Putin tries to cut internet cables or blow up a Norwegian gas pipe this winter, there will be a NATO torpedo waiting. The hunters have become the hunted. Sources: Newsweek, Barents Observer, Reuters. From the sea, we move to the land. And here we're seeing the end of European idealism and the return of brutal survivalism. For 25 years, Europe said no to landmines. They signed the Ottawa Convention, destroyed their stockpiles. They thought war in Europe was history. Putin proved them wrong. Now the Baltics are bringing the mines back. Latvia is establishing anti-mobility parks. That's a polite military term for death zones. They're digging ditches, stacking concrete pyramids, and preparing to seed the border with high explosives. In Estonia, there's a fierce debate about officially withdrawing from the mine ban treaty. Top generals are saying, "We cannot defend ourselves with paper treaties against Russian tanks. We need mines." This is the rebuilding of the Iron Curtain. But this time it's not made of concrete. It's made of high explosives. The Baltics are signaling they'll turn every inch of their border into a graveyard for Russian armor if they have to. Sources: LSM, Latvian Public Broadcasting; ERR, Estonian Public Broadcasting; Politico. And leading this charge is the new military giant of Europe, Poland. Warsaw has launched the Eastern Shield, Tarcza Wschód. This is a €2.5 billion project to turn the eastern border into a fortress. We're talking integrated surveillance towers, deep bunkers, automated turrets. Poland is not waiting for Article 5. They're ensuring that if a Russian tank crosses the border, it won't make it 100 meters. This is the militarization of the European landscape on a scale not seen since World War II. Sources: Notes from Poland, Defense News, Reuters. Who's paying for all this? And where is Washington? Here's where it gets interesting. While the media focuses on Trump's rhetoric about Ukraine, a quiet but massive shift is happening in the Pentagon. The potential new war cabinet has a clear philosophy. We help those who help themselves. And nobody helps themselves more than the Baltics and Poland. They spend 3% to 4% of their GDP on defense. They're the model allies. Lithuania just signed a massive $495 million deal to buy US HIMARS rocket systems. This is music to American ears. It proves Baltics aren't freeloaders, they're customers and partners. And it's not just sales. The US Congress approved $228 million specifically for the Baltic Security Initiative in the latest defense budget. The message from Washington is clear. Old Europe, Germany, France, is slow and hesitant. The Northern Line, Poland, Baltics, Scandinavia, is the new front line. And we're backing the fighters. NATO isn't brain dead. It's migrating north. Sources: LRT, US Department of Defense, Defense News. Let's tie this back to the beginning. The trucks. Von der Leyen's sanctions are the final piece of the puzzle. By seizing European trucks, Lukashenko thought he had leverage. Instead, he handed the EU the perfect excuse to close the border completely. If the new sanctions package goes through, Belarus will be economically decapitated. The middle corridor for Chinese goods will be blocked. The West is effectively saying, "You want to play hybrid war? Fine. We'll cut off your money, your transit, and your future." Sources: European Commission, Reuters, Politico. And then there's the elephant in the room: Kaliningrad. All these moves, the mines in Poland, the submarine hunters in the Baltic, the closed borders in Lithuania, have one ultimate target. They're isolating Russia's exclave. With Sweden and Finland in NATO, the Baltic Sea is a NATO lake. Russia's fleet in Kaliningrad is trapped. The land route is being mined. The airspace is being watched by balloon killers. Putin's most strategic outpost in Europe is turning into his biggest vulnerability. The Northern Line strategy isn't just about defense, it's about encirclement. Sources: Jamestown Foundation, ISW, Foreign Affairs. But the Northern Line isn't just Poland and the Baltics. The game changed forever when Finland joined NATO. We need to talk about the 1,300-kilometer nightmare Putin now faces on his northwestern border. Finland is building a massive fence along the Russian border. But it's not just a fence. It's a sensor network. Every footstep, every engine start on the Russian side is now heard by Helsinki. Finland has the largest artillery force in Western Europe. By joining NATO, they've turned the northern flank from a vulnerability into a fortress. Russian bases in the Kola Peninsula, where their nuclear submarines live, are now within range of Finnish surveillance and fire. This is the strategic checkmate. Putin wanted to push NATO back. Instead, he doubled his border with the alliance. Sources: YLE News, Finnish Broadcasting, Reuters, The Guardian. Across the water, Sweden is locking down the center of the Baltic Sea. We have to talk about Gotland Island. Military strategists call Gotland the unsinkable aircraft carrier. Whoever controls this island controls the entire Baltic Sea. For years, it was demilitarized. Not anymore. Sweden is remilitarizing the island at breakneck speed. Patriot missiles, tanks, infantry. Why? Because if Russia seized Gotland, a surprise attack, they could block NATO from reinforcing the Baltics. By locking down Gotland, NATO has turned the Baltic Sea into a cage. The Russian fleet in St. Petersburg and Kaliningrad is now trapped, and Sweden holds the key. Sources: Reuters, The Guardian, Defense News. But why all this panic? What is Russia actually doing in these waters right now? They're preparing the battlefield for day zero. The joint investigation by Scandinavian broadcasters revealed a terrifying reality. Russian ghost ships, disguised as fishing trawlers or research vessels, are actively mapping offshore wind farms, gas pipelines, and internet cables in the North Sea. They aren't fishing for cod. They're fishing for vulnerabilities, looking for the exact spots to place explosives to shut down Europe's power grid in a crisis. This is why the hunter teams are so critical. The UK and Norway aren't just chasing submarines. They're playing cat and mouse with these surface spy ships, trying to prevent the next Nord Stream explosion before it happens. Sources: The Guardian, Barents Observer, Reuters. So let's look at the map one last time. From the Arctic ice of Finland down through the mined forests of the Baltics to the fortified border of Poland, the Iron Curtain has returned. But this time, it was built by the West. Lukashenko's truck blackmail and Putin's submarine games have achieved the exact opposite of their goals. They've woken up the sleeping giants of Europe. The continent is arming itself at a speed not seen since 1939. The question is no longer, will NATO defend every inch? The question is, does Russia realize the door is now locked? What do you think? Is this militarization the only way to stop Putin? Or are we sleepwalking into a wider war? Let me know in the comments. Subscribe, hit the bell, because the Northern Line is where the future of Europe will be decided. This is Global Power Report. We watch the collapse so you can prepare for what's next.